Hey guys, my name is Jonathan and welcome back to the Raylock Sandbox Engine video series. Whew, that's a mouthful. Anyway, in this video we're going to go over what an app is, how to create it, the basic structure of an app, and also how to add it to your toolbar. So let's just jump right into it. So the first thing we're going to do is open the Sandbox IDE, and then we should have something like this. Now, an app is just a Python class that uses our app utility functions. So to build the most basic app, I will show you how to do that. First thing you have to do is import our libraries from utilities.raylock. Import star. And you'd create a class called app with a capital A. It doesn't have to be called app once you're adding it to the toolbar. However, for testing inside the Sandbox IDE, it does have to be called app. So next you'd create the constructor. And from there, you would call the start app utility function. And pass in self. Now, what this does is, this is basically telling it to use our engine. On top of that, whenever you run it, you can't run it as regular Python. You have to run it as app. And that's what actually allows it to use the engine. So if you do run app, you get the most basic GUI and basic app that you can have. So this app's not really that useful, but we're going to add an input and an output to it. So to do that, add input. I'm going to call it input 1. And then I'm going to also add an output and call it output 1. If I exit out of this, do run app or F6, you'll see we've added an input and an output. Now while this app doesn't do anything yet, you'll notice that there are 3 buttons that start out in the app. One being the solve, print, and help. So they don't do anything yet. But let's change that. So in order to use the solve button, you would actually create a method of the class called solve. And this is basically the code that's run anytime you press the solve button. So in this case, let's say we want to take the input, which is a number, and multiply it by 2. Well, the first thing we have to do is get the input. So we're going to create a variable input 1, and we're going to get input. You have to pass self, and then the name of the input you're trying to get. Input 1. And then next we'd like to set that output. So to do that, we would do set output, pass in self, and we're going to set output 1. And what we're going to do is multiply input 1 by 2. So if I exit out of this app, run app, and I put a value of 3 and press enter, you can see we get a value of 6. Now, the solve is a special method reserved just for this button. For the print button, because print's already taken in Python, we have document, and you can see I will do print from document. Oh man, I cannot spell. Document. And then the help is the reserved method for that. So now, if we run app, we put 2, you can see we get 4. If we do print, prints to the console. If we do help, also prints to the console. Now that's the basics of basically the app structure. So the actual design of the app, including what widgets you want, plots, outputs, things like that, have to be done inside the constructor. If you try to do those somewhere else, for instance inside a solve, it's just going to be ignored by the engine. When the app is launched, it needs to know what's going to be there, and that's why you have to place those here. It's also important to remember you do have to call the start app utility before calling any of these functions that are provided with our engine. For solving, anything you want to occur whenever the solve button is pressed has to be done inside the solve method. It's also important to note that the solve method is the only one that can actually set outputs. You could try to do that inside a document or help or the constructor, but it only works inside a solve. Documents used for printing basically output reports. Now we have a single line function that you can do that does that, and we'll cover that in a later video. However, you really have the freedom to do whatever you want. You can print a text report, or you can, I don't know, show a picture of a puppy. Inside of help, same thing. Typically use that to launch a document that you have describing the calculation, or maybe launch a website, that has the equations you're using during the solve method. But it really is up to you. But now that we've created our beautiful app here, how do we add it to Engineer Sandbox? Well, the first thing we're going to do is save this as, let's see, and also it needs to be saved inside of your Documents folder, Raylock, Apps, and we're going to call this Example App 1. Okay, so to add this to the toolbar, you would launch Engineer Sandbox. From here, you would go to File, App Registry, and let's say we want to add this under Miscellaneous. What we do is click on Miscellaneous, and you'll see Add PyApp. Select Add PyApp. It's going to show you all the available Python files and the locations where apps are allowed to be. You can see there's several here. The one we just added was Example App 1. You'll click that, and then it's going to ask for the available classes. So in here you can see there's only app, and this is where I was telling you it can actually be named whatever you want. You can even include multiple apps inside of a Py file. But in this case, our app is named app. So if you hit OK, and let's say we're going to name it Example App 1. Okay, and you can see it's added there. Now, nothing will happen unless you actually click Finish. So if we click Finish, you'll see. Relaunch Sandbox, and now that app should be here, and you can see. So that's really all there is to creating apps and adding them to the toolbar. It's pretty simple, but there is some more advanced features that we're going to cover for the rest of this video series. But if you like this video, please leave us a like or comment, and we'll see you on the next one.